Welcome to Not Just Ads, the show where B2B brands discover how creator-led content drives pipeline, builds trust, and grows long-term brand equity. Each episode, we speak with business leaders, founders, and creators who are defining their categories. I'm your host, Marcus Sherwin, and this is the Creator Economy for B2B. I'm delighted today to be joined by Beth Rees. Sarah is a Director of Demand Generation of Orem, and she's also highly experienced in growth marketing and performance marketing, having worked in a number of companies across the industry, Red Hat and also Sourcegraph as well. Sarah's built a number of demand generation engines that not just drove leads, but actually impacted revenue across the businesses as well. So I'm really excited to be joined by Sarah today. So we're going to kind of delve into the conversation a bit deeper around the B2B creator space. Sarah, thanks a lot for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Marcus.
Great. Maybe you could share a little bit about Orem for people that are not aware of the company, what you guys do, where you sit in the B2B space. Everyone, I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Of course. So Orem is an AI-powered live conversation platform. We got our start in the early days of dialing as the first AI-powered dialer. We sit in the tech stack primarily used by sales teams to automate the worst parts of cold calling. Along the way, we've added in an amazing virtual sales floor, call analytics, and most recently AI role-playing coaching to really round out the full suite for everything you need to build pipeline over the phone.
Great. So you sit in the space of even remote teams or sales teams where they're looking to really kind of make sure that they're effective and that you can do that sales training remote by leveraging AI. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So we were really built with the use case of needing to build pipeline over the phone, so integrating that dialer into a multi-touch outreach sequence. Our company was founded fully remote. We believe in the power of remote work. So we have a sales floor, a virtual sales floor. It feels a lot like Zoom when you go in and you can work with your entire team. Managers can listen, coach in real time, collect feedback. You can chit chat while the phones are ringing. And so it creates the sense of the bullpen that we all know and love from our days working in office online.
How does it work then with the sales team? I'm always interested as well in terms of how you kind of, I suppose a lot of people would say highly productive sales teams it's a collaborative thing. But companies do that successfully remotely as well. So I'd just love to hear a little bit more in terms of how you kind of build that camaraderie when you're fully remote as well.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of different ways that we do it. It starts at the culture level with leadership. So not just through Orem, but through our larger company culture, the way that we communicate, celebrate, work together on platforms like Slack or our regular all hands and larger group meetings. But then as a specific sales team, you can create these rituals of your call blitzes, your daily stand-ups, those sorts of things. We host those on the sales floor. So it's just native, it's intuitive to our sales organization to work there. We have different breakout rooms that we can hang out in or a general room. A unique thing about working at Orem means me as a marketer, I have access to this too. So I can just go sit on the sales floor and co-work with my SDR and AE team as they're dialing. It allows us to just have, human conversation the same way that you would if you were sitting in an office together, but we're doing it while being really productive on the floor. And so those are a few of the ways where we're creating a sense of camaraderie, that energy, and just it's really in the culture of everything we do.
Yeah. And I guess as well from a marketing standpoint, if even doing that in a way virtually, you're also getting a lot of feedback via the salespeople on like what's happening, certain challenges, what's happening in the market as well.
It's my secret weapon. Honestly, I joke if we opened up a marketing seat, I would immediately switch to an AE and I could sell that thing like hotcakes because I get to sit on the sales floor while the team is doing outbound prospecting, but also when they're following up on marketing leads. And so I get feedback in real time. Let's be honest. How many of us who aren't sales leaders are really listening to call recordings every day? It's not my favorite thing to do, but it certainly is interesting to do it in real time when my seller is having the live conversation and I'm slacking them or chatting them about what's going on. I'm talking, oh my gosh, did you just hear that?
Yeah.
Or we'll get off the call and I'll hear them, maybe they didn't call us a live conversation platform. So I can ask them like, hey, that's the messaging and positioning we worked on. Why are you using something differently? I noticed it worked. And so it's a really great way to keep marketing and sales in alignment and really improve what we're building as a marketing team.
It's so easily done as well. I think the bigger the organizations really struggle with that, but being just putting in the time, it gives you so much valuable feedback that can be, it breaks down the silos a lot, I imagine.
Oh, yeah, back in the day when I was in an actual office, I would have to walk up to the sales floor and I would go sit in the cube with our SDRs and listen over their shoulder while they were making calls on their desk phone. It was not the most efficient way to do this at scale. So we even see use cases for sales floor for companies that are hybrid or in office because it breaks down those geographic barriers for teams.
Yeah. I'd love to talk to you a little bit around what you see now in terms of B2B brands. What's standing out? We talk about B2B creators and stuff, but that's a very broad topic because there are so many in this space, but then there are so many niches and sub niches in the space. But if you look from a marketer, what do you think is working for you as a business when you look at that space? And what are you thinking about like that's actually effective, has been effective for you over the last year in this space?
Yeah, so you'll hear me talk a lot about the idea that brand is demand. So I sit in a role where I own a pipeline and a revenue number, but I don't execute any sort of lead gen activities. I focus entirely on brand, inbound, and prospecting, inbound being like high intent demo requests. And I'm seeing more and more brand marketers or demand marketers embracing this idea that it really starts with a brand. I think you'll hear, in many conversations, if you're at a conference with a group of marketers, that 90+% of your market is not in market buying at any given time. And so we have a really big job to address those people and build affinity there. So the idea feels like it's crossed the chasm and it's accepted. I think that brands are still figuring out how to do it correctly, because still a brand campaign can't just be something fluffy, right? It needs to have an emotional resonance. It needs to tie back to your product somehow. One of the things I'm seeing people do wrong is they're doing these big LinkedIn takeovers, these big activations, and there's nothing that pulls it back to your
Yeah.
product. And that does very little for long-term brand recognition and product or solution recognition. And there's not really a good way to tie that back through. So I'm seeing people move into this space, but I think there's a few people who do it well and some people who aren't doing it that well. Orem was quick on the brand, started our brand as demand program like 3 years ago. So we've done some of the splashier, really like brand awareness feeling things. And then we're also doing this thought leadership because we do have pretty large brand awareness in our market. We don't have to go as fun as we used to. We still do because it's fun to do. And there's always new people coming into the sales ecosystem, but pulling it back into the product and what our solution is, that's really key to our success.
Yeah. Just one point that you made that was really interesting there at the beginning. Like you were saying that you have a number in marketing. So the way you're set up then, are you're basically measured, obviously marketing, the function is different, but you're also measured on that, on the number, on the company goal as well, in terms of the activities that you're doing, you're driving towards that as well. Is that the
Yeah.
way you're set up as an organization in terms of like you mentioned you work quite closely with the sales team in terms of like listening to them and so on, but also from a business standpoint of like kind of results, the marketing org like has a figure as well that you're optimizing and working towards, no?
Correct. We're responsible for bringing in a certain portion of our revenue as well as our pipeline. This was especially true. This was our primary metric when we were heavily mid-market focused. Marketing sourced pipeline and revenue was our primary metric. As we're moving more upmarket into the enterprise, we're co-owning the entire pipeline goal with the sales organization, which is admittedly a new way of working for me, but that is a way of really building that marketing and sales ownership of the business and also allowing room for the marketing activities that aren't necessarily going to source pipeline, especially we know this to be true in the enterprise. Those are primarily going to look like outbound sourced opportunities.
How does that look then in terms of, because I think the bigger the organization, and you've probably seen, I think the new CMO at ServiceNow, Colin Fleming, shared a post about like how the funnel is dead and MQLs and so on. And it makes a lot of sense what he was saying. But I think the other challenge then is it's like if you're a CFO or you're somebody in the finance team within an organization, you need something tangible to be able to go, I can actually see impact on this every 3 months, quarterly, whatever it is to report on. Having what you mentioned, marketing owning a number and being tied to a number, that obviously helps, and it helps it align with sales. But I'd be just interested to hear in terms of how does that look for you then on a quarterly basis in terms of marketing activities, especially when you mentioned about like kind of going up funnel brand activities. What
Mhm.
kind of metrics do you look at to kind of say like, okay, we're on the right road? This is only a vanity metric. Actually, no, this is more of a leading indicator. Is there anything that you kind of look at and you kind of go, they're actually in the last while and those metrics have changed, but they're more aligned in terms of the number as opposed to the previous like MQLs and so on?
Yeah, it was a lot easier when it was purely marketing sourced because we were on a regular basis looking at high intent inbounds and those conversions to a sales accepted opportunity. Easy peasy. As we're moving to this more co-owned pipeline model, you really have to take it from the pipeline number down into the specific marketing campaigns and looking at the campaigns that are gold on awareness, capture, and then acceleration. And so you look at the KPIs for those specific campaign types. With awareness, we're looking at reach and frequency within our total addressable market. For capture, we're looking at conversion or leads and how those leads are moving through to opportunities. Primarily still focused on high intent demo requests or contact sales, but we do bring in inbounds from content downloads or webinars or events and move those through their own sort of sales nurture. And then finally with acceleration, which I think acceleration also encompasses a lot of our enterprise ABM. That's much more about the number of touches on the accounts we're targeting or net new contacts that we've acquired within the buying center. And so if we make sure that each of those campaigns are doing their job correctly, the theory is it all ladders back up to the pipeline number. And of course, that's complemented by the sales outbound that sits alongside it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. What do you find is the biggest challenge though, would you say at the moment in terms of those that like that shift now? What would be in terms of the transition? What was the biggest challenges that you found?
I think I doubt that this is unique to Orem, but for us, it's re-architecting our data infrastructure to report that crisply. A lot of our campaigns were not built at this level of breakdown, the way that lead source and all of those things were built together. So we're going through a bit of a data re-architecture to make sure that we can really easily click from pipeline to specific campaigns and those sub KPIs.
Yeah. Is there particular CRMs that you use that you get a complete overview in that, or is it a number of different partners that you find effective?
We have to bring in a variety of different lead sources, or not lead sources, data sources. So we use Salesforce as our primary CRM, HubSpot for marketing automation, and then we use Dream Data for attribution. But Dream Data, of course, is pulling in all of the data from our different marketing channels. And so by pulling those together, putting them into a data lake and out into a dashboarding
Yeah.
platform, that's
We had Laura a couple of weeks ago on the show actually from Dream Data.
love her.
Yeah, yeah, she's great, and the content they share is amazing as well. You've probably seen the billboard post on Times Square a couple of years
Oh,
ago.
yes.
We've talked about that. Yeah, no, they've a great product. It's a great company. I'd love to hear a little bit more. You mentioned there as well about leveraging the thought leadership piece and how you look at that. Does that play into those components, or does that kind of sit on the PR side, or where does that sit then when you mention like about the different steps? How has it worked? What's working? What's not from what you see so far?
Yeah, so I think of thought leadership kind of like a campaign but it's a campaign where it's more of a creative messaging campaign that can fit into the different jobs of awareness creation and acceleration. So we'll do thought leadership around international dialing is a big thing right now. And we have a ton of data that we can use to create thought leadership pieces and work with really large customers overseas, feature their voices. And so we put together a campaign that's about international dialing. We can use that to create awareness in the market where people aren't necessarily aware of the capabilities. We can have things like special demo requests, contact sales, strategy sessions, webinars that sit in the capture portion of our pipeline campaign structure. And then when it comes to acceleration, those accounts that we already have in pipeline or may even be like expansion renewal opportunities, this is just more value that we can bring to them through this campaign. So that's how I think about thought leadership with the different like pipeline jobs to be done. So you have this layer of campaign objective, but then you also have the campaign messaging or offer that sort of sits horizontal across all three.
Yeah. What do you think in terms of the content itself, like the specifics of the content? Are you speaking to a certain buyer persona, or is it something like that? If it's on the awareness phase, it's more of a broader message that might translate across different buying groups, and then you can get kind of more specific as you go further into the process with them. Or what do you normally think about like that when you're actually creating the content and the purposing of it?
It really depends, but if we're just going to keep going with like the international dialing example, knowing that our business goal is breaking into the enterprise with the enterprise buying committee, we know that we need a pretty senior champion. And that champion may be in the RevOps organization or in the sales development organization. So we'll create content for both of those personas. In some cases, they have the same interests. And so if you create like a big rock piece of content, like a report, you don't necessarily have to break that down into the personas, but maybe the ads message differently. We use Mutiny for landing page personalization so we can test like dynamic content and dynamic messaging there by different
Yeah.
personas. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have like people then in the company that are sharing out that in terms of they're sharing that message from a kind of a thought leader, whether it's C-suite or whether it's different orgs, or is that more like kind of like say a piece of content and you get every employee can kind of like repurpose it and share it from themselves?
Yeah, so our internal social selling motion is not as robust as it once was. That I think that one of the tricky things about creating brand voices internally is that oftentimes, especially in a sales-driven culture, those brand voices leave. So we're in the process of rebuilding, but for sure we have a few people, especially our sales leader Colin, who have a really strong social presence, and so he crafts his own posts. We put those out. We love to use those as promoted posts versus running our own posts. We also have plenty of friendlies in the space and plenty of influential customers who might share these things that we can then do thought leadership ads with. And then, of course, we make the content available to the rest of the organization to publish as they see fit.
Yeah.
And lots of resharing of our own brand posts.
Yeah. How do you find with the B2B creator space then? Like, where do you see that going in terms of what you mentioned now about, like, say, content that's targeting a specific buying group or a buyer persona? Do you see it being effective in terms of if you're to partner like with B2B creators, let's say sales B2B creators or sales enablement, people like that have a large audience and that have an affinity or an alignment with your message and so on? Have you tested that, or do you see something like that as being effective?
We've spent a lot of money with B2B creators early on when we were trying to build general brand awareness for Orem as well as product and solution awareness. We did a ton of go to market through B2B creators to get our name out there. I think it was a really successful tactic. At the time, like many startups, we were also hanging out in the mid market space. And so these influencers had a lot of connections, not just with IC practitioners, but those mid level and even senior managers. And so super effective. As we're moving up market, we still work with some B2B creators when we want to run campaigns that are focused more on I see affinity. It is a bottoms up, top down motion for sales software. So we play with them there. I haven't really cracked the nut on B2B creators or creators in general that are going to have the right influence among, let's say, the C suite at the enterprise. My hypothesis is that it's a totally different approach to social marketing and creator marketing.
Yeah. What's your hypothesis though on that? What do you think if you were to like make some predictions in terms of like the enterprise C-suite versus say mid-market or SMB in this space?
Yeah, I'm not positive that they're on LinkedIn the same way that the mid market is. And if they are on LinkedIn, I know that they're much more focused on their peers or key personalities in areas that they care about. For example, AI feels very old hat to some of us scrappy startup people, but we all know that enterprise is a massive freighter ship you have to turn, and they're probably just beginning to adopt AI, and they're paying a ton of attention to leaders at AI companies. And so those are the people that are most influential. They're also not entirely pay to play. So it's a little bit tricky in terms of how you work with those people. I think for me, the strategy that I'm using is bringing them into events. I think, everybody wants to do an executive dinner, and we all know with the rise of AI, we're getting a little burnt out on online, and we're really valuing that in-person connection. I don't know about you, but I have more invitations than I could possibly say yes to. So part of standing out is having those people that they really want to meet and hear from live in the room. So it's a totally different ballgame.
Yeah. Yeah, one interesting thing that I see a lot on LinkedIn now in the last 6 months is people from very regulated industries that are sharing more content. And what I mean by that is like the CEO of BlackRock, John Gray, he shares a lot about himself going running wherever he is in the world. I think it was the recently I saw like UBS, the Swiss bank, they shared, it was a bit more formal than that, but they shared like a video about their earnings report just on his phone. So it's interesting to see because before, probably 2 years ago, you'd never see people that are on the board or running the company sharing LinkedIn videos that are, first of all, informal and kind of like on a video. It's usually more higher production kind of thing. So the transition there is quite interesting. But I get what you're saying. I think it's a one that there has to be a relevance there that's worth their time to engage because they have a lot of people that want to get their attention. I think the thing about the peer to peer though, the in person events, like any professional, no matter what position they have, if they know that they're going to meet a peer, that they're going to learn something from it, and it's going to benefit them, whether it's their career or whether it's they'll learn something new. I think that's always going to win out in a face to face setting.
Absolutely.
I've always found that that's probably one of the most effective things, getting the right people to meet each other and just being the facilitator for that and not trying to push too hard the agenda, but just facilitating that. And it has a compounding effect that can be really beneficial, I think.
Exactly. I totally agree with you. We take the approach, and we don't even call it event marketing at Orem. We call it experience marketing because our goal is to create a memorable experience. And you're right. It's getting the right people in the room is essential to making it an event that's going to be effective and valuable to the attendees.
Yeah. With the creator space, like for companies, you've obviously seen in certain segments how it's been effective. What would you say to companies that are maybe not really started in the space but are looking into it? They can see that there's a value there. Is there any learnings or anything that they should take into consideration before launching or before working with creators, and then how it can impact their business overall that you would tell them?
Yeah, there's a few things that I would do in terms of, if they haven't started, what they would need to do to potentially create that short list. I think the job of any good marketer is to become obsessed with the personas you're going after. So act like them online and see what voices are coming up. If you don't have self-reported attribution on your forms, that's a really important thing to add because that's a really great resource for us to see people say, "How'd you hear about us?" They'll tell us Jason Bay, Scott Leese. And so that gives us an idea of who they're listening to. And then surveying communities as well to see who they think the top people are in the space. And then the approach that we used that worked really well is we tested a ton of them. I think in the first year we had 15 different sponsorships that we did. And by year 3, they were really whittled down to 3 core partners. And the other thing that you can do, which wasn't in place when I started out in working with B2B creators, is there are a lot of creator agencies now that you can work with. There's a niche in the Wishly group. There's Creator Buzz. I'm forgetting the name of the platforms where you can just put in.
Limelight is one. We had David on the show a while ago as well. They have the platform where they connect the creators to brands as well.
Yeah, so there's so many of those now, which I think if I had been starting out 3 years ago, that's probably what I would have done. But the way that we did it worked really well too, because we got really close personal relationships with these
Yeah.
creators.
In terms of measurement, then what were you looking at? Was it really just kind of like upper funnel kind of reach? Like that were the main KPIs that you were looking at?
We were using creators to build brand awareness, but also to build our marketing database. So we did a lot of like webinar style partnerships with the creators. And those webinars obviously come with social promotion and shout outs. So that was the approach that we used.
Okay, interesting. I'd love to hear your thoughts then in terms of where you think this is all going, like what trends you see in the future, apart from AI.
Where do
No,
I
no, I'd
think?
love to hear that as well, obviously. But like one of the things that's really interesting, and I think it's we had Justin Michael on a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about how the AI thing of automating everything, and there's a lot of truth there. But also, he was saying that he's talking to some companies, and they're actually building up the SDR function because the AI is enabling them to be better at selling and being more prepared. But they see that you're not just going to be able to close a deal with an AI voice, and it's because of regulation and many other things. But like at the end of the day, humans want to buy from humans, and AI can complement being making us more effective. I'd love to hear though, in particularly in your space as well, where do you see all this going in terms of from a marketing perspective, but also from a sales perspective as well?
Yeah, I think it's extremely dangerous to predict anything. I was just at a leadership exchange last week and I walked away feeling like, how do we navigate through the next 5 years? Because I don't even know what the next month is going to look like. But some of the things that we're seeing in our data, our data is showing, is definitely confirming that SDRs are not going away. In fact, like Justin mentioned, we are like the SDR profession is growing. There's a variety of reasons around that. It's illegal to do voice over the phone. It's just strictly illegal. So you need human voices, and humans can't close a deal for a complex product that doesn't have a self-service motion already, or AI can't close those deals. So I see the SDR space and the sales space continuing to grow, and really that EQ and like human relation based selling and marketing is going to be what wins. Humans have a really good BS detector, and we know when something is coming from a robot. So I just saw a post on LinkedIn yesterday that said CEOs with AI are not CMOs. Like ChatGPT can give you a marketing plan, sure, but that's not going to get the human essence that makes a true
Yeah.
marketing motion shine, a true call script shine, all of that stuff. So I think that the effort that goes into being human is just going to be ratcheted up. From the marketing space, I think in-person events are just going to continue to be so important, and I think that that's actually going to end up having to result in more marketing jobs because there's only so many places so one human can be. And I'm really looking forward to that. I think it's going to force us to get creative and better at events, and rising tides float all ships. And then the last thing I would say, I get nervous for the creator economy. And the reason that I get nervous is because just like we can sniff out AI, we can sniff out brand deals. And when it's an inauthentic brand creator relationship, I think a lot of the B2B creators, hope this doesn't get me canceled, I think they're just taking money because they're seeing the rise of the B2B creator tide, and they're making a lot of money, and good on them. But I don't think that that's going to be the most impactful long-term play for either them or the brands. And so that's really something to keep an eye out for when you're entering into B2B creator partnerships as a brand. And that I would also encourage the B2B creators that I know and love to be cognizant of as they're continuing to work on creating great content.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point as well because, like what you say, everybody can see that if there's a misalignment and it seems inauthentic, a couple of months down the line, there's going to be a suffering. Like you're going to erode some kind of equity that you've built both on the creator side and on the actual brand side as well.
Yeah.
It's interesting what you were saying about the in-person events. For Beat, what do you see in terms of that? Like, do you see more small, very targeted micro events that have like the right people meeting each other? Or do you also see then some other events like industry B2B events? If you could share anything that you found good or that you find that it's worth attending, we can include the notes in the show, but it'll be interesting, I think, for the users to hear as well, or the audience to hear as well.
The trend that's really standing out to me is the rise of like ancillary events around big conferences. That's always been a thing in terms of we're going to throw a happy hour at Dreamforce, or, we're going to have a dinner while we're in town. But I'm starting to see more full-blown event experiences happening. We did this ourselves at Inbound last year when we threw an event called Outbound at Inbound, which was a conference happy hour experience at a fire station. We did something similar at Forrester B2B Summit. We were sponsors of Forrester B2B Summit, but then we also threw this like big, crazy after party. There was just this really rich experience, super themed around severance, which was really hot at the time. We're participating in one at Inbound that's like a half-day event alongside Inbound. And I don't know that I have a lot of hypotheses about it. I just think it's really interesting. It makes it hard as an event marketer to plan my spend because it's no longer as easy as like, am I going to get a booth and a speaking session, or am I going to take that very expensive booth and speaking session? Which, side note, prices for most of our sponsorships doubled from last year, which is wild when I can throw a happy hour experience with live goats for 10% of what I spent to be at Forrester B2B Summit. So it's making event marketing really tricky now, and I wonder what it means for the big conferences. Um,
Yeah, we're seeing that trend here, like in some of the big ones in Europe for Web Summit, which is not just B2B, but it's a big tech show. A lot of people do like off Web Summit events. Cannes, there was a couple of things like that as well, and also in Mobile World Congress as well. I think people just evaluate, like, will I have something small where people will pass by and that's still ridiculously expensive, or can I create something unique where people are, you have their undivided attention if they're coming. It mightn't be as big a crowd, but it's like your ideal buyer persona and they're in town for that. So, yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
yeah, that's tricky.
One thing you mentioned there was our Inbound, but the other event, I didn't recall the name. You just mentioned it, 4-star or B-star. What was it?
Forrester B2B Summit.
4-star B2B. Okay. Where is that? In New York, is it?
Forrester B2B Summit was in Phoenix this year. So Forrester is one of our big analyst firms. Gartner also has a number of summits
They have one
throughout
in
the US.
Barcelona as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a place that we hang out at for the enterprise side of things. Dreamforce, Inbound, the really big ones. And we have a fair amount of confidence that the enterprise audience is going to be there. I think as we mature towards verticals, then we'll probably start to show up at more vertical conferences because we know the people that we want to talk to are going to be co-located for that period of time. But those are examples where we probably wouldn't have a booth.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I can imagine you're going to see a lot of your like ideal customer at those events. Like it's right there. Forrester and Gartner, obviously two big players in the space. Sarah, it was a pleasure to talk with you. Thanks very much for joining us today. If anyone wants to find you, your content, what platform are you normally on?
Yeah, come hang out with me on LinkedIn, Sarah Rees.
Cool. All right, I will. We'll put a link in the show notes as well. Sarah, it was a pleasure to talk with you. Thanks again for joining us today.
Thanks, Marcus. Lots of fun.
Cheers.
Cheers.